Hi, my name is Ia Johnson. I'm coming to you live from Hertfordshire in England, and this is my little talk about how to push through that murky middle of your story. So, here we go. All right, so first off, congratulations. You've started your story. It could be a play, a novel, short story, poem, it could be anything. I'm going to focus this talk on novels because that's what I write mostly, but I think you'll find that there's elements of this talk that could appeal to pretty much anything that you're writing and pretty much any genre. So stick with me. So, first of all, tackling the middle. Why is it so hard? I find that aside from editing at the end, writing the middle is the hardest part of the story writing. So, if you reach the middle, congratulations. It's hard to get there. And I think one of the things as writers that we encounter are other people don't quite get just how difficult writing is. I find that, Lisa Simpson said it best, writing is the hardest thing ever. And I think you'll find that, if you haven't already, some people say, oh, writing a story, I could do that if only I made the time. Well, they're not making the time. You are. And now you reach the middle bit, so that's great. But it's an uphill climb. It is a challenge. So, first of all, have you set the groundwork for your story? Have you, do you know what this story is all about? Have you written the beginning? Or do you write a bit at the end, go back and forth? There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's only your way. But if you're at the middle section, then ideally you would have already set the groundwork for your story. So I'm hoping that you will have introduced characters. You don't need to introduce every character, but your main characters, yes. Your readers, if I'm reading your book, I want to have someone to root for, or someone, if they're not a good main character, then someone who's interesting that will keep me turning the page. Have you created your world? Have you, done your world building? Sorry, where like J.R. Tolkien, have you dedicated pages to, establishing how beautiful the world is, or where are people, where are your creatures, where are your characters, are they working in a downtown, warehouse somewhere, are they in an office? Describe what they're doing. And I don't pay enough attention to this when I write, but I think it's one of the building blocks of creating your world is describing where are your characters and what are they doing? How are they interacting with the world? So that's another thing. And also, have you established the plot? I'm not talking about the internal plot. I'm talking about the big bones of your story. What is the plot? What is the story? If you can say this in, your 30-second elevator pitch to an agent, you should be able to tell it to me here. What is the plot of your story? Because by the time that you reach the middle, I ideally would want to know what is the main plot of this? What's the big, stake? Are they going on a quest? Are they going to rescue a princess? Are they going to rescue a prince? Are they doing a thing? What is the thing? What is the mission, the quest that your main characters need to do? Or in my case, because I write mysteries, what is the mystery that they need to solve in order to, find the culprit or find the missing item or whoever, So ideally, what is your inciting incident that has begun your story? What is it that, you've set the groundwork, you've introduced your characters, you've created your world, you've established, oh, this thing is happening. And you need to, at least for me, you've established what is that big incident that kicks off what happens in your story. In one of my stories, it could be a girl is having a normal birthday party and she and her friends decide to go, TP the high school, and then everything goes wrong. So it could be anything like a plane crash to something more minor, more, easier to deal with, like somebody dies, and it might be a next door neighbor, it might be, a sibling or a cousin or something, but it doesn't need to be, groundbreaking, earth shattering, like a meteor's planning to hit the earth in 24 hours. It can be something closer to home. But I think to really get to that middle point in your story, you need to, introduce your characters, establish your world, create this plot, introduce it so your readers know who are they rooting for or who are they following, where are they in the world, and then what's this big incident that really kicks things off. So have you set the groundwork? If you haven't, take some time and start doing these things. Yeah, I wouldn't say you'll thank me later, but I would say if you dedicate the time, it'll help you in your story writing later on. So Next, think about if you're struggling a little bit with, the what I call the dust jacket of your book. So if you think about the back cover of your novel or your short story, what would your story be like in a blurb? What would it be like in 2 or 3 paragraphs? And think about now there's a process to this. What are you promising the readers? And have you delivered that yet? I mean, if you're not sure, then here's a little bit of homework for you. Write your book blurb. Imagine that you've got this amazing 6 figure book deal with a huge, amazing publisher. Congratulations. Isn't that great? And now it's your time to write your book blurb. And they don't want you to use AI. So, right. A lot of publishers don't, by the way, so keep that in mind. But yeah, what's your story all about? Can you distill it into 2 or 3 paragraphs and make them interesting enough that readers want to actually open the front cover and read it? If you don't know that, you might need to do a little bit of background research first and think about plot, think about your characters, think about your story, and what is it that you're telling? What is the story that you're telling? It's important. It matters. Okay, so next. Uh, do what it says on the tin. Now, this is where having, at least thought about your book blurb, that can help. If you've written the little blurb that goes on the dust jacket of your book on the back cover, then think about what is it that it's promising. You laid the groundwork. You said who the characters are and what's the big thing they have to do. What is the plot? Do they have to save the world? Do they have to, rescue someone, go on a mission, do a thing? Whatever it is, that's what you're delivering. That is what you're saying your story will deliver. So you need to think about that. And if you haven't yet, when you approach the middle of your story, think about, right, so what are the elements that I need to deliver? And we'll get a little bit more into that next here. So think about as we approach the middle of the story. So you've done the groundbreaking work, you've established the world, established the characters, you've had the inciting incident, right? So what happens next? Think about what needs to happen next in that story. You could be like looking at story arcs via the snowflake method. You could be reading the book Save the Cat, any kind of story writing arc that works for you. There's no right way or wrong way. But think about for your story, what needs to have to happen next? Is it a romance? Do you need to have a few romantic interludes? Are there a few battles that need to happen? A few clues or red herrings if you're writing mysteries like me? This is the time where you can introduce your subplots, have your sub characters and your supporting characters get a little bit more involved and just get more entangled in the story. This is where you can tangle things up a little bit, I would think. You don't need to reveal all. You could, if it's a mystery, have your characters solve a mini mystery, and establish that they're good at crime solving. You could build the romance a little bit. But this is where throw in some subplots, but think about what things need to happen next in your story to lead to the end. If you think about it almost like a marathon or a race. So you started running, now you're starting to flag a little bit, but you need to keep momentum up. So how are you going to reach that finish line? Is it a playlist? Is it stopping for water? How are you going to do it? All right, I'm getting a little bit too much into running details now, but hopefully you get the idea. So with that in mind, think about, what things need to happen, what kind of cool subplots, sub characters, what can you throw in? Maybe you'll throw the reader. But yeah, have a think about that. And next, up the ante and raise the stakes. So you're playing with things around a little bit here. That's great. But now you need to up things a bit more. The middle, I think, is where a lot of readers can put down a book. If your writing is good enough, your story is strong, they can still put down the book if it flags in the middle. So you need to, if you're flagging a bit, if you're like, well, I don't really know, I'm not sure what I could do, that's okay. Raise the stakes. Have the characters get into a fight with a boss or, a bad guy and lose. Have the romantic characters have an argument and have it go wrong. Or have them have a romantic moment and it go terribly wrong, but in a comedic way or in a heartbreaking way. I would say you could add a major plot point here, but I would keep it kind of minor just because you are in the middle. So you want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. It's, yeah, keep raising the stakes. think about what could I do to push these characters a little bit more. You could write them into a corner. You could have anything happen to them. You could, this is where you could involve the internal plots that their character is facing as well as the external ones. So, for example, you might have that, oh yeah, they need to race across town and pick up their dog from the vet. But at the same time, a monster is going to attack the other side of the city if they don't go and, stop them now. Well, which do they do? Internally, yeah, emotionally, externally, yeah, decisions. So that's just an idea I came up with, but hopefully you get the idea. This is where push them into having to make decisions that are awkward. Don't be afraid to write your character into a corner, and then it's up to you as the author to write them out again. How your character's going to get out of those tricky situations, you know, we'll see. And all right, so something else we should talk about is how at the middle of your novel, this would be at the midpoint. So if you're using the snowflake method of writing your novel, then this would be the midpoint section where, you're kind of like rising and where there's a kind of like an event or a thing that your character has to do. It might be a fight, it might be an altercation, an argument, a scene, anything, but it's where things are happening. And if you're using Beat the Cat, then this beat would be around the end of the first to, I'd say, closer to the end of the second act, where your character has accepted the quest. They've decided, right, this is their mission. Now you've got side plots, side characters, and supporting characters doing things. Things are getting a little murky, they're getting a little entangled. That's good. But now this would be the point in the novel where maybe they come up against, like, if you're playing a video game, a minor boss and they lose, or something has to happen here. It's not just delivering what you say it's going to deliver. It's actually, you need to move things forward within the plot so that they've tried to achieve their quest initially and it hasn't quite worked out. It's also a point in the novel or in your story where you can change things up. So, in one of my upcoming novels, I have where there's an initial mystery, an initial plot in the first half of the novel. And then as we get toward the middle, the scenes change, the settings change, some of the characters change, and where the novel shifts. I've created more details, more entangled red herrings and subplots and things to make the mystery more difficult, but I'm adding on to that. I've not just had them solve an initial one, I've complicated things a little bit. So you're driving forward your momentum and you're keeping things going. But yeah, you're entangling your characters in more little plots and subplots. So how are you going to transition from that middle to the end? Think about what next needs to happen. So you've entangled your characters in these plots. You've had lots of clues, red herrings if you're writing mysteries like me. If you're doing romance, then you could have, romantic moments and things where the characters almost get together, but they don't. And so what needs to happen to bring those two characters, or multiple characters, together? What needs to happen next for your characters to achieve their goal and solve the quest or solve the crime? What more things they need to do, in terms of mysteries? Do they need to interrogate more people? Do they need to ask more questions or maybe different questions? Are they looking at the wrong suspects? Are they ignoring some clues that they shouldn't be ignoring at all? Do they need to do a bit more investigating? Think about what still needs to happen to get to the point where you have kind of the big reveal, the big, moment where it's, for the reader, it's, they've done it, where the story resolves. So think about those things. It's going to be different for every story. There's not one, clear moment in time within a storyline where it's definitely like, this is the transition period. Or at least in writing, I haven't found that to be the case. And it will be different for every story writer. But if you just think about, okay, kind of, I've entangled these threads, almost like you're knitting or sewing something, I guess. Now, what do I need to do to start entangling them, or to start disentangling them, I suppose? Think about it as your midpoint, you're rising, and now what are you going to do to bring things back down? So I hope that makes sense. Any questions, let me know. Thanks. If you're not sure, then when in doubt, I would say, consult your outline. I think that it's really important to have an outline, at least a bare bones one, just because if you're not sure, that's okay, but you need to have a few bare bones in mind. You need to have at least the basic idea of what your story is about. So, could it be, about anything? Werewolves, vampires, Greek gods, goddesses, kings, queens, anything at all. But if you don't know, then you've got a little bit more prep work to do. And I think whether you're a pantser like me, how I used to be, a planter, which is how I am, or, a planter, plotter, there we go. Um, just have a think about, what's your story all about? Because if you don't lay the groundwork and the bare bones initially, even in an outline where you have it plotted out, right, this is what's going to happen, at least an idea, then you're going to find writing the middle section really difficult. And it just helps to lay that groundwork a little bit. So hopefully this talk has helped. It's kind of bite sized, but yeah, I hope it helps you. I hope you enjoy. And any questions, let me know. My name's Ela Johnson, and it's been great fun to talk to you today. Thanks. Bye bye.